there are total population is 7.6. Out of that, 4.5 billion people are live without sanitation, and 2.1 billion people lack safe access to water, and 1.7 billion people lives in areas where groundwater resources or other resources under threat. So almost 80% of the wastewater flows back into the system without being treated or used. That means we are polluting ourselves. So this is one thing that we all have to raise to the occasion and start doing something for water, especially the young people who are here. Please try to volunteer and then join the IWA, then try to do something good with all the international community. So the International Water Association is, I would say, it's a global water community, provides experience and leadership in transitioning to sustainable water solution, supports the global community to pursue sustainable development goals. So the 17 sustainable development goal by 2030 we have to achieve. In fact, IWD is a catalyst for innovation, knowledge, and best practice for the sector, external organization, and opinion leader. Is an international reference and source of knowledge for sustainable solutions. So we have a very good membership over the different parts of the world, a source for leading edge water knowledge, and any time that we can have a lot of discussion, research, and also the support a lot of projects. And recently, main important thing is that inspiring change. So this inspiring change has come into the picture because and recently, the last year, the IWA has come out with some four milestones on which that they have to work on it. One is a global change with adaptive solution, circular economy, mainly as a resource miners, and digital water is one of the important things that what we are concentrating, and diffusion of innovation. So I think this is where the webinar will help you a lot, whatever the innovation that different people are. So it becomes more on a smart approach, smart by design, by adapting and distributing and advanced kind of a thing, and smart use, doing more with less, and look at on the 3R policy or 4R, now 5R also has come, and smart control. This is one thing that we are missing. Anything which is not measured, it cannot be controlled. So these sensors, analytics, and OTIT integration is also there. We are working on that, especially IWD is working on. So the global reach, people are there at different governing members, university members, and corporate members, and also individual members. So you can just see there is a very large, even though maybe China 3, all the people are, the country is represented. So that way it is, all the countries have taken part in IWA. So and it is London ideally publishing. Now it is more on, it is shifted to London, even the global operation they have made, and they have also offices here and IW Asia, and it comes to almost Chennai. So it is more on empowering water professionals to become agents of change. So engage with thought water leader. That's the first kind of benefit any member will get. So you can connect to any water leader who are there. There is a system called IWA Connect. If you become a member, automatically you will be connected to all the experts. Network and exchange expertise at IWA event, get the latest advancement in the water sector, guide professional development, be a part of global like-minded community. So that way, we the slogan comes as start, engage, contribute, and lead. So you can become if you start a member, then you can engage yourself for various activities and contribute to the water management, and sometimes you may lead a particular thing. So there are many possible. So events are there. You can become a chair or review conference paper, communities, online, and contribute to new communities, write specialist content, organize IEEE event, propose workshop, and so on. So you can become a particular group. Tomorrow you may become a leader, and you can also join the strategy council. So this is IEEE India, which we have started in 2018. So you can see all the people. I am very happy to announce that last year the Indian person who has is an NGO got the IEEE award. So that was one of the very important things. So this and overview of members, some of them are very good, some of them are very less. So I think you may have to, those who are in other parts of the country or all parts of the country should become little more active and then become the members as such. And there are many ways you can become members. The university itself can, and corporate can become a member. L&T is a member, CMWSSP is a member, and so on. So we have headquarters, an executive committee, and specialized subcommittees also available. So the IEEE activities in India, we have a good conference in Coimbatore. Ponram has organized it, and it is we also have the mainly the lettering solid waste management by CSE and reimagining water use plan with IFAT and thematic session of digitalization world. Terry, madam, is here, and we have also entered into some of the MOUs. As on date, we have at different participation at different conferences, and also we have started the webinar. So it's more on 240 participants. The recent WDC Water Resource Development Conference there and exhibition, almost around more than 240 participants from India which has held in Sri Lanka, especially in Colombo, and two major sponsors is L&T WABAC and institutional participation, Bangladesh delegation, Nepal, Danish embassy, and there are, it will be a very good event. And we are also getting into 2020, now it has been changed to 2021, and webinar series and also online training programs. So our main plan is the membership growth. It is not the number what we are looking at it. We wanted that everyone joins and then contribute on your own. We are only facilitating. So try to join, and then it is not somebody gives a work. You yourself take initiative after joining there. Automatically you can do that. Encourage YWP India chapter formulation. Mr. Charles is working on that, and the online webinar series. Industry University internship opportunity. This is what we are trying now. And British High Commission collaboration on water sector. So there are websites available. So those who want to join, or especially I would request that IEEE Connect and IEEE Network, IEEE Publishing. There are many journals are there, and the Source magazine which also comes. So if you become a member, there is a chance that you get some priority on publishing, unless the quality of course, the quality is very important. Then, so with that, I will just stop here. I don't want to get the time from our Jagannathan sir, but it is our duty to tell you, just to initiate, please join. There is very lot more thing that you can do, especially for our country, the world, on the water. It is a basic elixir of life. Thank you very much for listening. So now I over to Jayan or Chandran.
Jayan?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now Dr. Chandran, he will introduce Mr. S. Jagannathan and Mr. J. Venkatesh from L&T VET IC. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, very good evening to every one of you joining it here. I'm really privileged to introduce the Mr. S. Jagannathan, Vice President and Chief Technology Officer, Water and Effluent Treatment IC, Larsen & Toubro Construction. A mechanical engineer by qualification with close to 4 decades of experience in various business verticals of L&T oil and gas, steel plants, bulk material handling, water and wastewater. The capability spectrum encompasses the entire gamut of business ranging from business development, tendering and contract administration, project management, project planning, process developments, business strategy, engineering, procurement, technology development and deployment. So Mr. S. Jagannathan is qualified in strategic planning and implementation from University of Michigan, Singapore, and Management Development Program from IIM Ahmedabad and INSEAD Business School. So in his tenure with L&T since 1981, he has accomplished several critical projects to his accolades, out of which the following are landmark projects that would be etched in the L&T's Hall of Fame. Number 1, Tirumala Tirupati Water Supply Scheme, which was completed in a record time of 77 days with S. Jagannathan as its task force leader. Satya Sai Water Supply Scheme at Puttaparthi. Number 3, Tirupur Water Supply Scheme on PPP, Public-Private Partnership Model. Number 4, first of its kind, non-revenue water, NRW, UFW water management jobs for Bangalore City in partnership with MS Thames Water Company from UK. Number 5, bagging one of country's largest STP in Delhi with a capacity of 318 million liters based on A20 process with anaerobic digestion and power generation way back in 2016 for the wastewater business. He developed and built state-of-the-art STP at Rashtrapati Bhavan in 2014. During his 7 years tenure as head of the wastewater business, he had sculptured the business from scratch to a 2,500 crore business, what it is today, with more than 1,000 engineers and 10,000 workmen, executing some of the most intricate and challenging wastewater schemes and mega STPs in India. Mr. S. Jagannathan had been instrumental in developing present-day smart water management schemes a decade ago for BMW SSB in Bangalore City by partnering with MS Thames Water, and played a vital role in implementing the technology which is considered to be state-of-the-art today. Bangalore UFW project with 4 lakhs plus house service connection serves as a success story and a model project for the entire country. Mr. S. Jagannathan has always embraced changes, and venturing into the untraversed path has been a passion. He is currently designated as Chief Technology Officer of L&T's $2 billion water business and has been entrusted with the responsibility of conceptualizing and developing first of its kind one-stop R&D center for water technologies in India, in transforming the business to a technology-driven EPC as a part of the Perspective Plan 2026 of L&T. But beyond all these things, he is the Vice Chairman, the first Vice Chairman of the IWA India, and he has been a guiding force along with the Chairman with the respect to the growth and progress of the IWA India so far. Now, I'm really happy to introduce you, sir. Really, it's a pleasure in having you for this particular program. Now, I would like to introduce Engineer J. Venkatesh, Head Water Management, L&T, Larsen & Toubro Limited. Venkatesh leads the water management initiatives for L&T and has over 32 years of experience in design and construction of water supply and distribution projects for utilities in India. In his current role, he is managing number of water supply and distribution projects specific to equitable pressure management, asset mapping in GIS, hydraulic modeling, NRW reduction, billing and meter data management, and L&T. He started his career with the Tamil Nadu Water Supply and Drainage Board, a state-owned utility, and implemented several water supply projects for the urban local bodies in the state of Tamil Nadu. Later, he was in charge of Water Infrastructure Division at Fisher Consulting Engineers Private Limited and was instrumental in developing feasibility studies and detailed project reports and environmental impact assessment plans for project under JNNRM, Asian Development Bank fundings. He played an active role as the technical auditor for 24/7 water distribution management in the demo zones of Hubli, Dharwad, Belgaum, and Gulbarga cities under World Bank funded projects. During 2007-8, he worked as an external consultant for Asian Development Bank and was responsible for enabling MIS framework for infrastructure PPP projects in the state of Uttar Pradesh, India. He also has on-site project experience for integrated land development infrastructure projects and industrial development parks in Arizona, USA, Vietnam, and Germany. Venkatesh is a civil engineering graduate and holds a master's degree in environmental engineering. He is certified master modeler from Hesitate Methods, presently Bentley Systems, and S3 ESRI certified GS professional on RGS. Really, I'm happy to introduce both these leaders of the L&T and especially in the water sector to this forum. I'm really happy to say that almost we are nearing 450 participants. This is probably the highest number that we have handled so far. It's a privilege for us to have both of you at here. So now I'm giving the dais to the L&T team headed by Dr. Engineer Jagannathan. Please, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandran. It's a marvelous introduction, and we're always proud to have such introduction from IWA and IWA chairman headed by Professor Morgan. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to one and all. At the outset, I would like to thank you all for getting registered and connected online and exciting and then this important session on smart water management. We are going to tell about a few success stories which we have going to speak about on Bangalore water supply success stories and a few other projects, and what is the future potential available on this smart water management. As a part of IWA ecosystem, I always believe that with the leadership of Professor Morgan from IIT Madras, and as a role he's playing as a chairman, so it gives me immense pleasure and satisfaction by the way in which chapter is taking any good initiatives, bringing all great minds on a common platform, ideate and deliberate on some of the most happening topics in water and sanitation area. I would like to thank once again, Professor Morgan, who has been instrumental. I want to thank profusely Professor Morgan, providing a clear vision to the newly formed IWA Indian chapter, because he is a guiding factor and his leadership style has provided the much needed traction, I would say, that for the Indian chapter to be par with IWA global credentials. Thanks, sir. Thanks once again to Professor Morgan, because you are the guiding force for this IWA chapter, Indian chapter, to take it forward. Thank you once again. If you allow me to permit, I want to clap along with other people so that you will be, taking this, our sincere, thanking in your heart. Our history always say that provided behind the success of any great leader, there is always lies a silent contributions of the selfless lieutenant. Here the selfless lieutenant is Dr. Chandran, ably supported to Professor Morgan, and then Dr. Nipur, another vice chairman from TERI, is IWA vice chairman for this Indian chapter. So both of them, along with other colleagues, they are proudly managing the IWA chairman and then giving support to Professor Morgan. Thank you so much. And apart from that, I want to congrats to the entire team of IWA Indian chapter. Those who are really contributed well under the leadership, and they will set a new benchmark, global benchmark for IWA India chapter. Because why I keep telling IWA India chapter? Because this is the IWA is a platform you get, knowledge, experience, and energy, or you can enrich your knowledge. So this is the platform you can do wonder, and then the person wants to passion about the water. This is the platform, everything they provide on water. So again, coming back to on behalf of L&T, because L&T also want to thank Professor Morgan, because this is such a greatest opportunity you're given on the IWA platform to present this smart water management, because one such kind, we don't get such an opportunity to cover and then link all the 1,000 people, those who are registered for this program, and hopefully I'm saying that around 500 people are currently attending. So thank you so much on behalf of L&T. I'm conveying this thanks to you. to discuss the most pressing issue. Today, the pressing issue in the country is the water, not the COVID, the water. The water issue is in the country is pressing issue. The day which requires attention of policy makers, probably some of the policy makers, those who are attending in this conference, in this mega live webinar, water industry people and academicians, the brilliant academicians, I could able to see many of them are attending here. This is the one unique platform which brings all three together in this platform. So why do you need for smart water management? Why do we need? So you are all aware that globally we are facing acute water shortage crisis in there because there are two things. One is the rapid population growth. Another is the economic development. These two components are creating water crisis in the world. So with the world reeling under water pressure, unprecedented water crisis is happening in the world. So you can imagine the situation at Cape Town. See the Cape Town scenario. Why Cape Town alone? Last year in my own city, as seen in Chennai, the same, we almost ran into that situation last year. So these are all some of the water crises we are facing in India. So we have to have a solution. That is the one. These reasons are, I found that why these water crises are happening. That one is the exploitation and abuse of natural resource, or the evident cause for this complicated tangle, that we have got into that complicated tangle. We got into that, exploitation, and the natural source are being either polluted. You are aware the natural sources are being polluted, like you take the Ganga, or exhausted to the extent these main water sources are not sufficient to meet the ever increasing water demand. You can see the Kaveri now. So we have very less water available for drinking purpose. While we all discuss and focus on this subject, like policymaker, water industry people, academician, all these people, generally they will focus on revamping, replenishing the water bodies and bring about policy on reuse. But I want to say one thing here. In my humble opinion, we are missing out on an easier alternate which deals with plugging the leaks in the water system, which can create more impact than the other methods, which I feel so. In India, the data shows that at least 45 to 49% water leakages are happening in the treated drinking water distribution line. It is being wasted due to leakage and improper distribution system network. This is what I feel that based on my last 10-year study, which is evident. In developing country like India, the majority of the population still lacks access to safe drinking water. You know that there are still 30% of the population in India still lacks safe drinking water access. In my opinion, I feel it is a sin to waste 50% of the treated water through leakage. So we have to do something good to the society. It is not just water that being wasted alone. It is not ending that we are only wasting the water. To pump that water, the ancillary resource required like energy for pump set, also we are wasting for extra pumping of water. So I leave the tangible and intangible losses to the august audience, those who are watching the live webinar. So this is the imagination to your whatever imagination you can do on tangible, intangible, where it goes. So here, what is that smart water management about? What is that we are looking for smart water management about? The smart water management is managing, I feel in my definition, it's a managing the area on a micro level basis. In the process, we divide the area into series of smaller DMAs. The DMA needs to be hydraulically isolated so that the volume of water lost within each DMA can be calculated. This is what the smart water management we are talking about. Of course, we add some digital component onto that to measure, monitor, and then really analyze for that. When a supply system is divided into a smaller, more manageable areas, I feel that we can better target unaccounted for water or non-revenue water. This is happening through reduction of activities, isolate water quality problems. You can isolate water quality problems and better manage overall system pressure, hydraulic pressure. You can manage better system overall pressure to allow for equitable water supply throughout the network. This is what the smart water management component. My colleague, Mr. J. Venkatesh, is heading the water management, will be presenting a detailed specific in a short while. Before he takes up the presentation, I would like to share my, few example what I undergone in the last 10 years on the water management side. So at this moment, I would like to thank, before I go to the, where this project, the case study I'm going to discuss, I would like to thank BWSSB and then BWSSB ex-chairman, Mr. Vidya Shankar, was IAS at that point of time, 2000, the year 2000. So he has given an opportunity to, look for, how to manage this water management. He has brought the new initiative and then he has accepted our initiative to go about the water management. I would probably say that BWSSB is the front runner to open for new ideas and look an initiative to rectify the inefficiency in the network. Kudos to BWSSB and of course now the Delhi Jal Board also on the front runner on taking the water management subject. So I want to take you all of you to 10 years back now when L&T first conceived this idea of unaccounted water or so-called non-revenue water, which has now evolved and replaced itself as smart water management. Previously, it used to call as unaccounted or non-revenue. So Bangalore city with all its issue, rapid urbanization, you know that now the population in Bangalore is phenomenal. And even a rapid depletion of water source we are hearing because Bangalore you get water from the underground more than 1,200 feet. So you don't get water just like that. So we have to pump water from to the Bangalore city more than 100-kilometer distance. So when these are all the situation in Bangalore and also further, the whooping of 49% leakage level at Bangalore. This is what evidence we have created. We have found out that 49% on the line, the losses were happening. So what is that I'm trying to say that it was worrisome to the government at that point of time that we did not have any established proven technology to do how to arrest this leakage on a scientific basis. So we thought that always I'll believe that solutions are available when somewhere and we should only have the bent of mind. I always see the bent of mind if it is there to scout for solution and implement them wholeheartedly to reap the benefits. So this is the idea, when I was the cluster head, I thought that, okay, when you have a bent of mind, we can always find the solution there. So when we are searching for a partner, we found that Mr. Thames Water from UK was the pioneer in this field because the London water supply has been managed by 7 water companies, biggest water companies. One of them is a Thames Water UK. So rightly, Thames Water, we have made a partner for this type of job. So Thames Water was also accepted to give their knowledge sharing. So we joined together, and then when 2 big minds are joining, innovation happens when best minds collaborate. So L&T collaborated with Thames, and Dr. Brian Alam is a pioneer and specialist in water management. We are global expert in water management. We are taken on the board for the solution to crisis to the Bangalore. This is a simple story of the Bangalore. Now, I looked at this unparalleled learning opportunity. I was thinking that when you engage at Thames Water, we have ample opportunity to learn that, to do that. So I was particular that my team gets a chance to work directly with Dr. Brian so that I roped him and despite his very, I would say that high remuneration package, despite because, British, they always charge very high. Despite his high remuneration package, so we engage on the board because to learn great things, you need a great man. So this is my mantra of learning things. So it was inevitable at that point to have someone like Brian. So India, at that point of time, India country lacked people, not having many people and lacked technical knowledge, practical experience on water management side at that point of time. So I made up my mind. This is an investment. This is an investment to train our young engineers. So this way, who will go and develop such project across India and help in preserving the nature most precious water. So this was coming to my mind at that point of time to engage those people. The results you are seeing today, the outcome of that successful project was the leakage level. We have brought down from 49% to today hovering around 20%. So this is the story of Bangalore water supply. So as I explained, at that point of time itself, we have done SCADA and GIS system. That was the state of the art at that point of time, the year 2000. The project, the area is around 106 square kilometer and covering around 3,000 kilometers of network. And we also touched upon 4 lakh house service connection. It's not a simple job to go to the field and then connect with the 4 lakh house service connection, discuss with the people and understand the people, and then every house service connection, every house is a client for us at that point of time. Not only BWC, every house we have to satisfy them, we have to prove them. So we have come here to do a good job for you. So people have cooperated like anything. Today you are saying 20% leakage only. Still we can bring it down little more. Homework to be done. So before I go to the conclusion, so I want to have 3 points to give this to the August audience. I always believe that for India to set a global benchmark in water and sanitation, we need at least 10 times greater number of environmental engineers. This is required because the 10 times of current scenario, what's the engineers coming out from college on engineering, environment engineer, we need it 10 times. So like this, for this water management to flourish, our university need to create more specialized courses designed for water management. In this, people are listening, eminent people are listening this webinar, and then wonderful academicians are also participating in this. So I put this forward to these people with my humble request, please consider this our water management specialist required from your institution. In fact, it is very interesting to note the executive director IWA, Dr. Kalanidhi Bhairavamurthy himself has done his doctorate in water management from this part of the country. We need such genius minds to resolve this impending crisis. We need such genius mind. You may have an intelligent traffic management in our cities. We may have intelligent traffic management cities. Hyperloop transportation system may come to our cities. We may have a foolproof security system in our city. But all this becomes meaningless when the water is not being managed in a smart manner. I finally conclude that smart water management is what that makes a city really smart. With this small, I request my Venkatesh to take it forward. The excellent presentation he's having on that. So kindly Venkatesh to take over, please. Thank you so much for patience. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, SJ sir. Thank you, Mohan, Professor Mohan, Dr. Chandran, and all my co-chairs for having given me this opportunity to share some insights on smart water management at this August forum. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yeah, so I'm just sharing the presentation screen on this. Yeah. Sir, are you able to, is everyone able to see the screen, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This is the topic of today's webinar, Smart Water Management, and followed by a success story from L&T, which SJ was mentioning on the Bangalore case study. Typically, if you see smart water management, it is essentially a system that is designed to gather data meaningful data on flow, pressure, and distribution of the city's water. This could also mean that in case if you want to reduce leakages, we have to gather data on some of the acoustic parameters also. And finally, the aim is to ensure that efficient service delivery is provided to the consumers. So this is basically has a three-pronged approach. The first one is deploy appropriate technology in smart water management, reduce the operating cost by increasing the automation and the right kind of SCADA, etc. in the system, and also concurrently reduce the water losses. And finally, bridging the gap between supply and demand. Now, if you see the presentation content, I would like to cover this presentation in the following categories. First, there will be a brief overview about L&T, the need for smart water management, and the smart water through pressure management, leakage management, meter data management, and command and control. So these are actually the methodologies. This forms part of the entire gamut of smart water management. So that again, I'll be covering it in the next few slides. So this is about the L&T construction. Typically, we have this great organization has 8 major verticals, and you can see them all here. But what I would like to mention here, due to paucity of time, is on the water and effluent treatment IC, from where we all belong. The panel, my colleague also is from this IC, and most of the projects in smart water management are being executed from here. This is about the further division on the water and treatment effluent IC. We have 3 major strategic business groups in this. Where we belong to is from the water and wastewater SBG, which actually executes or carries out most of these water management projects, including smart water. One slide on our presence in various locations. We currently have about 108 projects across 17 states, and we have a presence in 5 different countries to cater to the needs of overseas markets. This is one, I would like to specify some of the select references that have been working on water management. This is the mapping of the entire component from intake to the last point of consumer metering. So currently we have the first 3 projects, Bangalore D2A, D2B, and the Delhi Jal Board project, which have been commissioned, which have already been completed and commissioned, up and running. The next 3 projects, what you see, Pune, Tumkur, Hazaribagh, and Ranchi, are currently under ongoing status. And the last one, we have the entire range of scope, right from intake, elevated service reservoirs, distribution, rehabilitation, giving new house service connections, then metering and billing, and also conversion from intermittent to 24/7 supply. And of course, NRW is not the least, it's the most important for any smart water management. So the 3 projects out of that, the Bangalore D2A and D2B is going to be presented here as one of the case studies and success stories. A need for smart water management. It emanates from the fact that it's a responsibility to provide affordable, sustainable, and pure water for all. And also from the fact that this resource of water resource is very limited and finite, and there has been an exploitation of this resource in any developed countries or developing countries, and also there is an increasing demand between supply and gap. So if you see the current status and challenges, I'm just referring to the challenges in Indian conditions. I have divided this into 5 different buckets. The first one I would like to take from the left, the network part. The distribution system, the networks are managed by the utilities or the ULBs, urban local bodies, and most of them are done manually and there is a lot of scope for interventions in automation and technology. The second one is the NRW, which is a major burning issue plaguing the system. We have losses and thefts which are not benchmarked at present, and also there is a large quantity of water that has been lost in this particular component. Then we also have the asset management, where the data available with the current utilities or whoever is managing them are not to the level that is desired for actually managing the system. So there is a scope for improvement there also, like deploying the technologies like GIS and IMIS. The measurement component is, again, we don't have consumer metering in many cities and many places at the moment, and therefore, while you can measure the bulk flow meters, the consumption that has been supplied through bulk flow meters, there is not much of a scope to measure the consumer metering, and therefore we are not able to assess the correct levels of NRW here. And finally, the distribution, which is intermittent supply in many cities, or most of the cities for that matter, with multiple inlets, and also the pressure is a major problem because we have low pressure, unlike the developed countries. An interesting statistics that I would like to share from the Times of India dated February 16, 2018. This is about the Kerala Water Authority transmission main. They have given an interesting detail about the water losses in the transmission main. This is to the tune of 1,200 million liters every day. And this, when it is converted to annual loss in the transmissions, it amounts to close to around 2.62 billion Indian rupees, which is a staggering amount. And the corollary and the conclusion we can make out of this is that the annual deficit reported by the Kerala Water Authority for the year 2016-17 is to the tune of 3.9 billion. And if we manage to bring back or arrest the leakages, plug the leakages, and recover it back to the system, we would have increased the revenue deficit to a 66%. Besides increased revenue by way of charging the consumers through water charges, another 5.54 billion rupees. So net, we would have made a 33% revenue increase to the utility if we have to plug the losses and bring it back into the system. This is about the eminent management guru, Peter Drucker, who has made a very interesting statement, that a quote that if you can't measure, you can't manage, and that applies to water also. And the cartoon here, shows about the policymakers or the managers more focused on developing new sources and creating infrastructures rather than actually, plugging the leakages, which can actually bring back almost 50% of the requirement of the sources that are going to be generated. And similarly here, if you see just two snapshots of some of the illegal tapping that has been seen in one of our Delhi Jal Board project. When it comes to the global scenario on the non-revenue water levels, there is an interesting study being done by the World Bank, and this has been displayed here. Germany, Japan, South Africa, they are all well within the 10% advanced limits. But if you see India, we have a staggering 46% of losses in the system. These are physical and commercial and also apparent losses. And out of this, it is interesting to note that 32% is due to pilferage or thefts. And just to give a snapshot on the service level benchmarks that have been specified by the Ministry of Urban Development, they have actually categorized this service levels into 7 different parameters. The first one being on the efficiency on collection of water charges, which has to be at 90%. 100% cost recovery from water services so that it can take care of the O&M part. 100% metering for all the connections, consumer connections and the bulk connections. Coverage of water supply has to be 100% to all the consumers. And then non-revenue water has to be contained within 20%, which is a major challenge. And then we have the per capita supply to be given at 135 LPCD. And 100% of the water quality samples taken has to conform to BIS 10500 standards. Just to give an idea about non-revenue water, the definition of that says that it is a difference between the quantity of water supplied vis-a-vis the quantity of water consumed. So that's it. And if you see, the percentage of NRW is calculated by this formula, and it is measured as a percentage of the whole thing. Here again, I just wanted to touch upon some of the salient aspects of non-revenue water, at what points or what value chain of the water supply system this has been disseminated. It starts right from the treatment works to the last point of billing. So treatment, again, there are losses there in the system, in the filter beds, in the flocculators and all these components inside the water treatment. And along the raw water and clear water transmission system from treatment to the service storage reservoirs, you again have illegal tapping, you have unrecorded users, and also you have losses in the transmission main, which are not so much as compared to the distribution system. In the distribution system is the main part where you find much of the losses happening. You have so much of many components, mains, HSE joints, then you have leaky walls and the likes of that. And again, in the metering, you have losses due to errors in the meter reading, tampering of meters, illegal connections, faulty meters, and also bypass to meters. I'll be showing some of the pictures that we have taken during some of our projects that we've been implementing, and that would actually throw some eye openers on how the quantum of water that has been lost due to this aspect. And of course, the last point is on the billing, where administrative errors, data computational errors, and loss of records also contribute to non-revenue water. NRW baseline versus targets. If you see the baseline physical losses, we would like to have it at economic levels of 20% as defined by MOUD, suggested by MOD. But where we would like to be, and at ideal conditions would be at less than 10%. But for this, we need to actually deploy a lot of technology, a lot of instrumentation at the projects, at the utility, to actually bring it down to this level. So the cost factor, or if the cost becomes a little prohibitive, then for Indian conditions, we would like to have it at 20% physical losses. Now, the technology interventions is something that actually contributes to smart water management. Without technology, it is, of course, decision making, all that support systems are there, but technology is a main driver where smart water management is made effective and efficient at the ground level. If you see this, actually, out of our experience in L&T and many of the projects that I've handled, there are four main components in this: pressure management, leakage management, command and control, and metering and billing. If all the four are actually holistically approached, this actually helps in bringing down the losses or whatever the deficiencies in the system and contributes to smart water. I'll be dwelling upon each of these in the next few slides. So I'm not describing the text mentioned in the bottom. The strategy for non-revenue water reduction would be on, the first one is making the operational zone, making it isolate, or rather hydraulically discrete, convert that into a specific watertight DMA. Then look at the pressure management and ensure that it is equitably done across all the points in the DMA, because more the pressure, more the losses. The third point is on the metering at inlets, both the bulk meters at the outlet of the service reservoirs, and all the consumers have to be metered for the complete DMA, so that we have estimation of the non-revenue water. We will be able to calculate or make a assessment on how much the water losses are. The fourth point is on the to eliminate the illegal connections, which is a very sensitive and socio-economic issue. And this has also been addressed in all the projects currently. Billing to be made on meter reading basis and not on flat basis. Like many of the corporations right now, they have flat rates, and then that is a percentage of your annual rental value, etc. But that has to be converted to a volumetric tariff system. Sorry. Yeah. Then the leakage detection and rectification. This is an important component to bring down the physical losses in the system, and also midnight flow observation if there is a continuous pressurized supply in the system. The first one is on the equitable pressure management. If you see this, there are main things about pressure management is using the right kind of sensors, pressure transmitters at critical measuring points. Typically, these are anywhere between 3 to 8 or 10 points within the DMA, and this has to be there. If this is not there, then it becomes difficult for us to actually manage the pressure. And one has to be at the outlet of the elevated storage reservoir, and then one at the farthest point of the DMA, and one at the highest elevation point in the DMA. Besides this, we can have the luxury of having many more, depending on the budget available and the permissions that are given inside the system. The second one is on the pressure management. These are typically done using pressure PRVs. There are two types of PRVs here. One is hydraulic. The second one is the electronic PRVs. Hydraulic PRVs are basically we have set points at the inlet of the valve and outlet of the valve. And using this system, we'll be able to control the pressure downstream. Then there is also a concept of pressure on demand. So based on the demand of the consumer, at that particular sub-DMA or the street where the pressure has to be managed, we can also set the demand pressure levels for that given demand and then manage that. The other one, what you see here is electronic PRVs, which are more advanced, and it actually helps in or retrofitting with the SCADA system. And these are also controlled. This can be controlled remotely and more efficient in managing the system. But again, it comes with its own cost. These are expensive. Just one slide on the pressure management, its effect on the life of the pipes. It's seen that from studies that if you decrease the pressure in the pipes by 50%, you actually can increase the life of the pipes by almost 10 years. So this has been proven time tested, and this is actually something that we can take recognize or take cognizance of for actually doing pressure management in our designs. The next one is on the pressure management using DMA concept. We all know that DMA is actually helping us in understanding the system better, where the losses are, and kind of manage the system more efficiently. But then if there is a sub-DMA concept with more pressure sensors within the sub-DMAs, it becomes more easy to handle, because we are actually breaking down into smaller components and then managing it more easily and effectively. So this is also which needs to be, of course, there are more sensors to be deployed here, and we can look at each of these on a case-to-case basis for our projects. Then leakage management is the second one. Just to give a brief on the procedure for leakage management that we've been adopting at L&T. So we have DMAs that are typically, as per the norms being established by IWA, anywhere between 1,000 to 2,500 connections, and also depending on the topography of the area. We do a condition assessment of the pipelines to ensure that the conditions, the leakage, the joints are all intact, or how bad or good the joints are. Plus, we also do a vulnerability analysis to map the hotspots and make a template for pipe replacements. The next one would be installing the required bulk flow meters and consumer meters, because we have to measure the entire volume flowing into the system and that volume that has been consumed. Then installing the pressure sensors are critical measuring points to actually manage the pressure and also see if there are any discrepancy with respect to the designs, the ideal conditions that we have by doing the hydraulic model. Then we have the minimum night flow, which is actually done if there is a continuous flow, but if there's intermittent flow, this has to be looked into again. And using that, we calculate the net night flow. Narrow down, if the night flow is higher than the permissible levels, then we do a step test, pinpoint the leakages, and then finally we rectify the leakage. The next aspect is on the condition assessment of existing pipelines, because this contributes to leakages a lot. We have some of the technologies that we have explored, and currently some of them are under some pilot POCs in a couple of our projects. Pressure transient analysis can be done. This is typically done below the upstream and downstream of the wall, because typically when you close and open the wall, there's a transient wave that is generated across the pipeline downstream, and this can actually help in assessing the condition of the pipe. If there is any change in the signature or the waves of the pressure transient waves, then we'll be able to pinpoint or assess that there is something unusual happening downstream. Then we have the images, the inline robotics, the smart ball, and some of the crawlers that go into the system, and it basically camera based, and then it generates images out of that, and we can monitor the C value or the leakages or the damages inside the pipeline. But this again has its own limitation, because this goes through cable inside the pipeline, and the diameter also poses a problem. This cannot be deployed to it is difficult, or we have seen that this cannot be deployed to pipelines which are less than 200 mm in diameter. So larger diameter pipelines, this can be deployed, but the constraint is on the smaller ones, which we have majority in most of our distribution systems. The third one is a satellite aperture radar. This is again the technology that through the satellite, the electromagnetic radiations are sent into onto the Earth, and these radiations actually penetrate up to a depth of 2 meters below the ground level, and it detects certain signatures that are specific to leakages in the water. So those signatures are actually stamped. Those stamping of the images or the signatures are actually correlated with the leakages, and then we are able to identify that these areas are vulnerable to, or rather there are leakages in that particular area. The last one is acoustic, which I'll be talking about in the next slide. Then we also have the other associated pipelines, cables, sewer lines, optic fiber cables, gas lines underground. And for detecting this, we have something called the ground penetrating radar. And this is also used in many of the projects, but the limitation of this is that it can only detect the metallic objects and not the ones which are non-metallic, like HDPE, or if it is PVC pipelines, it becomes difficult to locate this. Leakage detection, again, just wanted to give a small idea about how this is done. This methodology is a time-tested and proven one. It is called the minimum night flow test, and done between anywhere between midnight 12 or 1 a.m. to morning 4 a.m., where there is no consumption of water at the consumer level. This is actually calculated by the net night flow is calculated by observing the flow at the locations at the outlet of the ESRs, and also at all the consumer locations. And by that we'll be able to arrive at what is called the net night flow by detecting the legitimate night flow. This is again, there is a value given for this in IWA. So much flow has to be that this is allowable, permissible at that period. So much leakage levels are allowed per kilometer per length of pipeline. So using that, we calculate the net night flow, and if the night flow is pretty high, beyond the permissible levels, then we go into what is called the step test to actually isolate the zones, subzones where the leakages are high. So this basically by closing the walls one by one, and then observing the pressure and the flow parameters. And then if the pressure and flow is drastically different, it comes down immediately. We know that there is something different or abnormal happening in that particular subzone, and then we identify that using leakage detection equipments, and then rectify the leakages. So just one slide about some of the instruments or the technology that is available for leakage detection. We have the noise correlators, which are actually used to compare the acoustic noise at two different places in the pipeline. And then using that, we'll be able to identify the leakages. Then we also have the portable clamp-on flow meters, where through ultrasonic pulse velocity technique, we'll be able to identify, measure the flow and then identify the leakages. We also have listening stick and mechanical devices, which is actually deployed in many of our projects. And we have in fact done the training to the technicians and the persons there, and they are trained in using these equipments. And this is time tested and quite more dependable in terms of detecting leakages. And the last one is an expensive method. We have to permanently deploy the noise loggers at different locations in the pipeline. And then this creates a continuous data on the acoustics at the central control room. And by doing that, if you see any variation in the, the noise logger, the acoustic data that has been sent, we'll be able to find out which area or zero down the areas where the leakage is likely to happen. Some of the advanced solutions, we have the hydraulic, using AI and ML techniques. We also have started exploring some of the advanced solutions here. We have the hydraulic modeling done by WaterGems, and then this actually is the ideal conditions that has to be reflected on the ground. Now, we also deploy the flow sensors and the pressure sensors at strategic locations, collect the data, and then see how the data has been for the last 1 month or 2 months, and then superimpose that on the hydraulic model and see where the variations are, where the discrepancy is, and if there are any abnormal behavior with respect to the ideal conditions of the design vis-a-vis what is actually happening on the ground, then we might know that those areas are prone to leakages. So these are some of the techniques that we also have. The third one is on the meter data management. We have basically the flow meters, electromagnetic flow meters, and two types, the Voltman flow meters. And EMF is being deployed in many of the projects, and this is more dependable, and also this can be connected or directly sending the data to the SCADA. So integration becomes easy. Voltman is though a little less expensive. This cannot be. It has its own drawbacks because it is having, it hasn't got that electronic component on that. Then consumer metering. We have the entire. Earlier we had flat rate tariffs, consumptions not quantified, billing not justified. All these because of unmetered policies. Now, slowly we have moved on to multi-jet meters, where reading is manual. Mostly it is also monthly or bi-monthly, time-consuming. And then from here, we are also moving to an era of AMR meters. We are propagating this, or we're trying to build this in many of the projects. And this is, of course, a little costly, but it comes with many advantages. Your data generate is accurate, and there is also less human interventions in this. So therefore, it becomes more dependable. The last point is on the AMI meters, where most of the developed countries have this system. And this is a real-time data management system where the data generated from the meters are transmitted almost on a 15-minute or hourly basis. And this is very helpful to generate analytics out of it and meaningful interpretation out of that. Also, the advantage is that we can actually fix the system, the repairs quickly without the water being lost for a month. In other cases, we will actually be able to identify the leakages at the end of the billing cycle, maybe a month or so. But here you can do it instantaneously, and therefore the water that is saved through this is, can be enormous, with a lot of benefits out of that. And we have actually deployed this AMI technology in one of our projects for one of our DMAs as a proof of concept. our partners have actually deployed this, and we have generated a history of these AMI meters are generating data on an hourly basis, and the backend system, the AI tool or the software is able to do the analytics and generate reports on what the losses are, where the hotspots are, and things like that. And then data acquisition through AMR, just quickly, one slide on this. It is a walk-by method, manual method, or you can also have a drive-by system where the AMR meter communicates to the meter reader through RF radio frequency. And from there, it is transmitted through GPRS or GSM to the data control room. The second one is on the AMI, where there are two methods possible. The first one is on the data collectors and data concentrators, where you have HSCs communicating to the data collector through RF radio frequency mode, and then from the data collector to the concentrator again on RF mode, and from the concentrator it is sent or transmitted to the server using GPRS or GSM. And on the AMI or LoRa, what we call a low power wide area network, which is also called LP LAN, we have it covers a wider spectrum of HSC meters, typically of 1 kilometers to anywhere between 6 kilometers, depending on the line of sight. And this typically has a very powerful modem, a gateway, where the data is connected through your specific bandwidth of RF, and then it is communicated to the server. This is both the systems are actually real-time basis. Just one slide on what we have done on meter data management system. This is urban billing and revenue management system that we have developed through our partner for Tumkur, and this is being tested. The dummy bill readings have been generated, and now this has been deployed. Some of the one screenshot about the dashboard that we have for the system, and this actually the IMIS facility integrates the entire billing, your GIS, your meter data, and your revenue collection system, everything into one this one. So decision making and the visualization of what happens in the system becomes easy here. The last point is on this command and control using SCADA, GIS, and IMS. So we have SCADA. I think I don't want to dwell much upon this because it's there on many of us know about this. And again, we have the IMIs and customer relationship management system, where it becomes user friendly, and the complaint mechanism, the redressal becomes shorter duration of time to get the response time to repair the leakages, and also it can directly communicate to your web-based IMIS. IMIS, again, very important for asset management, to get all your water asset, the utility data on a point, line, and polygon database. The features can be got onto a shape files, and this can be actually exported into a geo database and analyzed, and also whatever developed new as built or new improvements to the system can be also concurrently updated. And this is one screenshot that I would like to show on the GIS platform that we have developed for one of the projects. You can see the building footprints here. All these building footprints are generated as polygons, and the entire house or property have been mapped into GIS. And each polygon has been given one identity, unique ID, and the entire database, the data on the consumer is meter status, what is the type of connection, what is the consumption pattern, what is the address, everything about the property that is related to water supply for billing that is required has been generated as a schema here, and the attributes are linked to the point database. So this is just, and the layer management becomes very easy and efficient. Now I would like to come to the project case study. This is the UFW project which SJ sir was mentioning. This is for the city of Bangalore, and the client was, we did this for Bangalore Water Supply and Drainage Board under JICA funding. Here we had the component of UFW that had to be addressed. This basically means that we had to bring down the apparent and real losses, but we had not much to do with the unbilled, unauthorized consumption, which is also in part of non-revenue water. So there is a subtle difference. So we had to address this as UFW project and exclude the unbilled portion of that. Now, this is the city of Bangalore. We have, there are two zones here. One is total 709 square kilometers, serving about 13 million in population. And on the water supply statistics, there are 8.6 lakh house service connections, supplying 1,000, the sources, the entire WTP capacity is around 1,350 MLD. That's been currently supplied with a loss of a staggering 49%. Now, these are the two areas highlighted in blue and magenta here. And this is called the D2A in the west and D2B in the south. These are some of the scope that we handled. There are 54 square kilometers of area to be managed. Total about 170,000 house service connections each. Total about 1,500 kilometers of pipe network in the distribution system alone. 83 DMAs that was evolved, formulated in this project, in these zones. And it started somewhere in 2012 under JICA funding. And both the projects are successfully completed. And currently they are under operation and maintenance. One aspect I would like to dwell here is that achievement is that out of 1,510 kilometers of pipe network, by just replacing or changing the assets, the pipeline to just around 18 to 20%, 18% for D2A and about 23% to D2B, we were able to bring down the losses from 49% to 22% current levels. So we didn't go about replacing the entire distribution system because there was a constraint, there was a condition imposed by JICA that the pipes were good and the assets has to be, it has to be taken care of. We just can't discard them just like that. And just by replacing all the less than 100 mm CI pipelines, we brought down the losses. Some project objectives: water conservation, continuous water supply, safe, clean water, increased revenue to the urban local body, that is BWSSB, bringing down the UFW to less than 16%, which is from the baseline level of around 49%, and meeting the future demand of the horizon period. Activity flow chart, I'll quickly take you through the methodology that was adopted for bringing down the losses. We started from a GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite System survey, followed by a topo survey to establish the ground control points on the elevations, contours, etc. From there, we also did flow and pressure measurements at strategic locations. We collected data on all these and then developed the GIS base map, mapping of all the assets, and then also did a hydraulic modeling through water jumps. Then pipe condition assessment to actually understand what are the amount of pipes, what are the pipes to be replaced and what are the pipes to be retained. And then having collected the data, we went about doing the bulk flow, the district meter installation at the boundary walls basically, and then doing the step test, pressure zero test, MNF test to understand where the hotspots are, where the leakages are there. And then having established the baseline level, we did leakage detection and rectification, and through repairs, we finally brought down the UFW to less than 22%. So just a snapshot on enterprise GIS that we used for D2A, D2B. This data on all the walls, all the appurtenances, pipes, everything has been captured on a satellite imagery. And this has been done both during the implementation stage, where different layers have been formulated, and each layer has distinct particular, appurtenant. It has a distinct feature that has been managed, and this has been updated periodically, and even after the even during O&M, wherever the repair happens or wherever any replacements on the valves or other appurtenances happen, this has been captured and it is updated on a periodic basis. Other results: D2A, we brought it down from 45%, the initial levels, to 23% as of March 19, and D2B, we were able to bring it down from 49% in 2012 to less than 23% in March 19. On the pressure, it's an interesting fact here that unlike developed countries, there is a unique problem in Indian distribution system that we have low pressure. In developed countries, there are continuous water supply and there is also the problem of high pressure levels. But here we have encountered low pressures of less than 1 meter, as you see in these red spots here. You can see this. This was the case when we initially modeled the DMAs prior to rehabilitation. And by proper rehabilitation and deploying the equitable pressure management techniques and the right kind of technology being deployed, the flow meters, the sensors, etc., we managed the system. And finally, after the implementation, rehabilitation, we brought it down to 7 to 13. We brought it up to 7 to 13 meters of pressure. So all the red spots are gone here, and people were able to get water even in the second floor of their property. So that is a benefit. That's one of the tangible benefits that we had in this project. And UFW reduction, I just want to dwell on one aspect, the last one, Goraguntapalya, where the pressure, the UFW was brought down from 66% of initial level to less than 6.6%. Again, on the pressure, the ITI layout, you can see that that has taken the maximum improvement in the pressure from 6.2 to almost 20 meters of pressure at the residual head. Some pictures on how it looked, some of the components on before rehabilitation, the leakages were there. It was actually existing for almost many years, and it was buried, and it was not actually surfacing out also. So the water losses were pretty high. And this is the condition of some of the walls that we had seen prior to rehabilitation. And again, some pictures on illegal connections, because you can see multiple connections bypassed through the meters. Some here you can see the connections being bypassed from the meter. And so this has to be done. Actually, a lot of constraints and problems that have been encountered in this, and because of and we actually went through this by a proper methodology on our illegal connection detection. So this was actually supported by the NGOs and also from the urban local body. You can see the encrustations inside the CI pipes. Most of the CI pipes were corroded, and the scaling had happened, and the C value were pathetic. So therefore, it was decided to replace all the CI pipes in this project. Some of the key benefits, for want of time, I'll quickly run through this. Better service delivery, improved billing and revenue for BWSSB, and adequate pressure, equitable pressure, and better water quality to the consumers. And finally, the deployment of customized technology helped in bringing better and good O&M practices for the O&M team, and also eliminated illegal connections, and these were streamlined in this project. So some of the challenges: condition assessment, permission for road cutting and restoration, then intermittent supply because of the supply was very it was only for 3 to 4 hours daily, and finally illegal connections. These were key challenges that we faced during the project, and this has been addressed with sufficient and good support from the ULB, from the client. And finally, with this best testimony of where we have achieved, what are the benefits derived from the project. This came featured in the Economic Times dated 30th Jan 2019. You can see the two red circles. L&T has reduced from 49% to 26% in one of the DMAs, and the other DMA of West, where Bashveshwar Nagar and Rajaji Nagar, it has been brought down 49 to 25%. Now, as we traversed along from 2012 to 2019, we have made substantial strides in digital and technology solutions. We have been working with many technology partners, many vendors, and we've been exploring some of the best practices being done elsewhere in the world. And we have been looking at pressure transient analysis. I'm not just being, brand agnostic. This is more on, focuses on more on the technology. Your pipe renewal planner. Then we have used some of the solutions on water network management by actually managing and analyzing the pressure, flow, and noise, and also deploying some of the robotics, some small crawlers and stuff like that to inside the pipe to actually assess the conditions. So these are, and currently some of them are in pilot stage. We have deployed them, and we are testing them, and the results are tangible, and we hope to actually take it forward to many other projects and expand it and scale it up to at the project level. Another most important initiative is the information, education, and communication quadruple P initiative. This is something which I should say my SBC head has been spearheading, and he's been a very strong advocate of NEER, which has been actually his brainchild. And it is just not about people, planet, and purpose. Profit also matters, but it goes to show that L&T has actually given a lot of emphasis on other aspects of the 3 Ps to bring down, actually to make the consumers aware and make the project more successful. And the last aspect on integrated and holistic approach required for smart water management. It is just not possible if smart water management is looked at in a silo. We have to have these 7 components integrated into the system. The NRW master plan, leakage control, asset management through GIS, your IEC activities, your equitable pressure management, your metering and billing to actually make a proper assessment on the consumption and supply. And finally, the DMA establishment to understand how the system behaves and make it more manageable. So this has to be an integrated approach, and like if it has been addressed in isolation, we might not be able to achieve the success in any of our objectives for smart water. And just some food for thought. Average water demand, assuming that we have 800 MLD to be supplied for each city, it comes to the tune of 8,000 MLD, and assuming 40% water losses, it is a staggering 3,000 MLD, 3,200 MLD water lost in as NRW. And if we had to recover these losses, we can actually cater to the population of almost 4 crore, which is sizable, and the benefits could be enormous in terms of helping or improving the service delivery levels in the country. Thank you so much for the patient listening. I hope it was informative.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, I hope we can, with the presentation, at the end of the presentation, we would like to move over to the question and answer session. And at present, we have 3 questions, and of course, given the time constraint, the rest of the questions will be answered via mail. So this is a word from our end as well as from the L&T. Sir, these 3 questions are to you, sir, to Mr. Venkatesh. The first question is from Mr. Akshay Sawant. His question is that CPHO manual allows 15% losses for design of any WSS. It is observed that the government water bodies of respective states sometimes allow more than 15% losses in the design stage itself. Where do we lack in this scenario? Planning or implementation, or lack of awareness about NRW?
Currently, sir, I just want to make a mention. If I go back to the slide.
Yes.
Yeah, if I go back to the slide, there is a slide of the service level benchmark that has been given by Ministry of Urban Development. which mentions that we need to have about 20% losses. That is what is permitted as per extent of non-revenue water is to the tune of 20%. This is right from the transmission, across the transmission, it is about 3 to 5% is permissible. And from the storage to the last point of consumer metering, that is on the distribution level, it's up to the tune of 15%. Now, this has to be actually addressed both at the planning and the execution level. In the planning, the proper hydraulic modeling, the proper study of the system, and then deployment of the right technology has to be done at the planning level. And subsequently, even at the construction or implementation level, these factors have to be diligently managed and it has to be implemented. So it has to be from both the planning and the implementation part to summarize, if I'm answering your question.
Okay, thank you, sir. The second question is from Mr. Ashok Natarajan. He has two questions. The question of two parts. The first question is about, has L&T developed their own IMIS integrating the technical and the commercial billing with GIS platform? That is the first question.
Yeah, integrating technical.
Integrating the technical and commercial billing with GIS platform.
Yeah. So currently we are doing that in one of our projects near Bangalore for Tumkur. This is part of integrated management information system is part of the scope, and we are actually generating or rather creating dashboards, and we are also creating the entire software which has facility to look at revenue management system, billing, and also the GIS component, which I understand is more on asset management. So all these have been brought onto a common platform, and this has been the user rights, the different aspects on MIS aspects are data being generated out of that, but it is still not implemented. But we are currently in the process of generating dummy bills and then working on that.
Thank you, sir. The second part is, how effective is satellite imaging technology for condition assessment of pipes? He feels that is the cut and open is much more reliable. So what's your take on that, sir? Cut and open versus the satellite imaging technology for condition assessment.
Yeah, condition assessment, satellite imaging technology. Are you talking about the synthetic aperture radar? That is which was the one which utilizes deploying?
Yes.
I'm not able to
understand. Yes. I mean, in fact, he is referring to your experience with Utilis, and Utilis, also. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. See, we have actually not deployed or seen any benefits of Utilis because that's a very expensive technology. We understand. Okay. We understood that the cost of it was phenomenal. We went through some of the project. They have deployed that in UP. We saw some of the reports that they have made. For one of the UP Jal Nigam project, they have done this. The imaging, basically it is electromagnetic radiations that get into the surface of the earth, and it can penetrate up to 2 or 3 meters. It actually picks up signatures or stamps of water that are leaking out from the pipes. That is able, they say it is also able to distinguish between sewage water, rainwater, or any other water distinctly with respect to the water that is leaking from the pipes. So that to that effect, they are able to identify, and they have some analytics or some of the trained people who actually can differentiate these and then make meaningful reports out of that. Of course, using trial pits and doing condition assessment is a time-tested method, and it has been done in many projects. But it is not so. It is very time-consuming and not so reliable as compared to this.
Thank you, sir. The last question. The last question is from Mr. Manish Mishra. How does L&T deal with water meter tampering? Is there any strategies adopted? It's a very practical. The last question, sir.
Sir, actually, I think this is we don't have any kind of vigilance mechanism or some people who are actually monitoring where all leakages or thefts are happening. I think SJ sir, could you throw some more light on this, on the Bangalore experience? Anything?
Yeah, Jain, He's right
Sure.
that tampering is happening.
Yeah.
You know, the intelligent people are available in the society. So generally it takes this tampering, but the wherever we are maintaining the scheme, we are detecting that tampering and then we are replacing it and then we are identifying and then discussing with the government and then set writing that. This tampering
Okay.
is happening. I do agree that. The first
Okay.
question I want to answer a little more
Sure,
deep.
sir.
The first question, somebody asked a good question that whether CPH
CPHO.
allows
Yes.
15%. Yes, rightly,
Yes.
because CPHOs maybe they might maybe allowing because it is depends on the pipes material what you are using and the workmanship. Maybe India, 50 years back they used to use asbestos sheet, asbestos pipe, AC pipe. The generally asbestos pipes start leaking from the day one when you lay the pipe because it is fragile and then they uses the rubber joint. It will not go beyond 10 kg pressure or 5 kg pressure. It will not withstand that. So now there are better pipe materials are available, and then wherever specifications, good specifications are there. The first day itself, when you do the hydro test, and L&T, whatever the project executes, there won't be any leakage, zero leakage to that level we are showing to the government engineers. And then slowly when the wind time is taking place for 1 to 5 years, slowly it deteriorate and then it moves to the 15% stage in the 5-year stage. Otherwise the first day the new pipe, whenever your new system you are bringing, it is with a zero loss.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for taking the first and the third question. Thank you very much to both of you, Mr. Jagannathan sir as well as Mr. Venkatesh sir. And with this, we are wrapping up the Q&A session. And as we told before, the rest of the questions will be answered via mail. So that is our word from us as well as from L&T. So with this, I'm welcoming Professor Mohan to give his final words, sir.
Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you.
Very good evening, and I really thank both of one is SJ, another is VJ. Both of them have the name of Jayam in that. Okay. So I think Jagannathan also is Jayam, and Jayaraman also is Venkatesh Jayaraman. So I think they made that this evening is a wonderful learning evening. And more importantly, what I would like to borrow from the same slogan what Jagannathan was telling. If you want to do great thing, you need a great mind. And here it is not one mind, two minds were there. So I think these two minds have done a wonderful job. And I think we have to learn a lot. I think one is the 40% was really alarming for me. I was under the impression it is less than 30 in some of the cities, but I think 40, but again, out of 45, 33 is pilferage. This is something that we may have to take up a little more seriously because you create such an infrastructure, and then if it is going as 33% as a theft, then there is something wrong in our system. So this is one point that I think they have given, and they are also doing a very wonderful work, practical. They have explained only Bangalore, but I am aware that they are doing quite a lot in different cities. And I only have two submissions. One submission is water quality is also going to be a talk of the day in future. Not only the amount, but I think the quality is also important. Why I say quality, especially for our country, if I look at when we have done a project with Kalanidhi and Guntur, we found that initially they put a sewage system, because that is the first requirement for the society. Then on the top, only they put the water supply. Or sometimes water supply is first, and then sewage comes on the second one. They don't have any other map, so they just put either on the side of it or on the top of it. So this is more vulnerable in our countries. So the contamination is likely to happen. So I think we have done a good research. One of our Abhijit has done on how the contaminant is getting transported. Maybe, practically you can utilize that particular result for your practical implementation. So I think there should be a collaboration, uh, not only from London, but also we have right under your nose, we have people who do a lot of good things. So I think there not only us, but there are many researchers who are working on this. I think we may have to have a forum like this so that we are aware of it, what is going on. So I think thank you very much for these two great people, great mind people, and who have shared all the information. And I think this is the way that we may have to go. What we are imagining is after some time, the water also should be a little more taken as an economic good rather than it is going to be. The second one, which I also am making apply in many situations, in India, 135 liters per capita per day is really on the higher side. Every time that we design 135, but we can't achieve that 135 LPCD at any point of time. Maximum 100, maximum 100, I am saying. So I think why do we waste our resources on putting a big pipeline and then getting only a small amount? I'm not going to take more time, but I think we have to come with a realistic figure of what should be the demand over the years. I think in the last so many years, we can get the data and then that as a standard rather than taking what is last. Another is the quantity. Quantity also is gone. Now the demand is increasing. One has to really look at a little more on this. And I think that's one area that I think L&D should start working on it and then make the government to reduce this 130. Let us not, I'll be more happy with 135, but 135 is not possible to because there is no source. We cannot put that much thing. And we are going on putting infrastructure very high. Okay. So I think with these few words, and especially I like the last slide with the explanation of NEER. I think we have to do quite a lot of that. So it is not a simple component of NEER. I think it is more money and more, not only money, it is an essential. So it is going to happen that next World War, if at all happening, we don't want that. It may be due to water. Unless we manage it, we may not be able to manage the entire people also. The moment people are not getting water, it will be much more problem than if he is not getting the food. So I think let us conserve it. I think that's a message from these two stalwarts who have done. I know so much they might have worked in the field. I think it is, you have a great mind to share it with. I think I should appreciate on that because not many private companies share the kind of a thing what you are doing. So I think that way I feel that both Jayams or Jagannathan and Jayaraman is really very good. Thank you very much, sir. Especially L&T has come forward, and I always like Jagannathan because he will come with the new ideas. And behind, we always say that for every success there will be a lady behind, but I think L&T, it is a man who is behind on the L&T. Thank you very much, sir, for all the thing, and I hope all the participants in this seminar got a real benefit on how to go about on smart water management. At least your son or daughter will enjoy the smart water management. We may not be enjoying, but at least your son and daughter or maybe grandson will be. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to host your lectures.
I need 1 minute time.
You are also part of us, right?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Sir, I need 1 minute time to the.
Yeah, please, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, sir. First of all, I would like to thank on behalf of L&T all the participants who patiently listened, taken their time out, and then listening to our live webinar. First of all, I wholeheartedly thank them because it is their precious time. They come here and then spend 1.5 hours. It is not a simple thing, and that too in the end of the day, 6 to 7:30 is a very difficult time, and everybody has to travel. They have to go home. Thank you so much, all the people. I believe that 500 people have they participated in the live webinar. Thank you so much, sir. The answer to your question, only one question only I can able to answer. Other questions are difficult questions you put. So, so the thing is 135 LPCD. Yes, you are right. By reducing the 100 LPCD, we can narrow down the pipe size and then bring the capex to the large extent. Yes, you are absolutely right. And India has to look at it. The other side of the coin is we are somewhere groundwater we are exploiting and using more than 135 LPCD in total. So that means a person normally consume 200 LPCD in general. That's what when we analyze about the wastewater treatment, it comes. The answer is coming from there. So naturally, what we can think of that we can reduce the 50 LPCD or 75 LPCD for potable water. And we can also draw another line, reuse water line separately, and then provide a reuse water line in the country, so that will take another 50 LPCD, so that both can go together. So we can also use the reuse water, and we can also save real water. So this is a way, maybe the academicians and then policymaker, those who are watching here, I request that all of us to put forth to the Indian government to come with a different solution to that. With these viewers, I don't want to take much more time because already time is running out. So thanks so much, all the people. Thank you once again, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Venkatesh.
Yeah, thank you,
For the
sir.
excellent presentation. Right.
Thank you, sir.
It is very good.
I'm honored to be
Okay.
part of this organization. Thank you, sir.
Well, the next seminar also will be there on the next Saturday. We'll make an announcement, mostly from a professor from Israel. So,
Okay.
we'll talk about on advanced wastewater treatment system.
Yeah.